Hi, friend. Long time no
Hello
see,
there.
buddy.
Good to see you too.
Yeah.
So it's been quite a while, actually.
Like a year.
Yeah. Since I've seen you?
Mm-hmm.
Really? Man, it seems like...
Almost a year. Because you...
You went to Disneyland.
Disney World.
It was Disney World. So it was right around that time I saw you last.
Okay, well, I went to Disney World a year ago.
Oh, so it's been a year.
Yeah.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. How are things?
Things are good.
What's
Busy.
going on in the world of recruiting? So we're not going to talk about sports, which is great.
No sports.
Because I don't know anything about sports.
Yeah, recruiting's good. I think the world's kind of back at it. The world is, I think during COVID, the world got very cautious. Yeah. People still needed good people, and there was a lot of hiring going on. But everyone was very cautious about who they hired, and the decisions took longer. I think we saw a lot of occasions when a company was excited about someone, and then they just took too long, and they would lose that person to another company who is moving just a little faster. I think the world's moving a little faster right now, which is good. Yeah. So that helps. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I don't feel that. Sometimes with some clients, I don't feel that way. Yeah, I don't think it's at full speed by a long shot, but I think it's picked up a bit. Well, I don't know if we talked about this last time, but I think it's interesting because now with candidates, I feel like candidates have more choice than they had before. Yeah. Like choice in terms of work environment. We live in this post-COVID world now where there's so many different work environments in terms of there's so much in between 100% remote and 100% in the office, and everybody has a different opinion about what's right for them. Whereas before, the only reason companies were remote was they had to be. There was no choice. Right. And so now you just have so much choice, and I feel like candidates get caught up in that choice, and then employers get, caught up in that choice, but they're not as flexible with that. Nope, this is our work environment. I mean, if you're 100% remote, it is what it is. But I just feel like certain companies, we end up interviewing more people because people have different ideas of how they want to work. Yeah. One thing we've seen more recently, and this is the tail end of 2023 for reference, is that I think there's a bit of a wave, and I'm not saying this is a tsunami wave, but there's certainly companies that are now saying, look, we work from the office. Yeah. We're going to be 1 day, 2 days out of the office, but for the most part, we're in an office company, and they're starting to make it more rigid for people that they talk to. And in fact, maybe why this is coming up in my head is we talked to a client last week, and they said, look, don't tell people that there's an opportunity for remote. There is, but we don't want to talk about it. We want it to be this in-office environment. And so I think that the other thing that came up out of that conversation, which was interesting, is that there's a lot of people whose lives changed. And during COVID, let's not blame COVID, but during the environment where you could work remotely and it was open and everyone was really doing it, people changed the way that they lived. Yeah. And so suddenly, instead of working full time and, someone else was dealing with moving kids around. Yeah. Suddenly everyone's moving kids around. And we were getting, we saw this internally where people would say, look, I have to work on this schedule. Yeah. Because I'm the only one that can get my kid to preschool now. Yeah. And that's the way our life has gone. And so now when people are being faced with, a company saying, look, we don't have a remote opportunity. We don't have these flexible things. Now people are being faced with, well, how am I going to get my kid to nursery school or whatever the case may be. So like I said, I don't think that is a tsunami kind of situation, but I do think companies are, it's kind of like that right sizing sort of situation. Companies are saying, hey, this works better. We need to be back to this. Sure. I think that companies can still be flexible with employees if they have or, doctor's appointments and stuff like that. I think that maybe the opportunity is for companies to say, if you're doing your job and you're doing it well and you're coming into the office on a regular basis and we would like you to be here these days, I think, whatever those days are, I think that candidates and employees should be accepting of that a little bit. At the end of the day, if you're not doing well at your job, then all of these little extra perks, will add up, and eventually, hopefully, you'll get laid off from your job if you're not doing a good job. But for the vast majority of people who are decent at their job, there should be some flexibility, and companies should be open to that. There's so much research post-COVID about people being lonely. I don't know if you've read any or had any conversations with people about in North America. I can't cite any specific topics off the top, any specific articles off the top of my head, but there's a lot of conversations about mental illness, and people are lonelier than ever before, and part of that has to be with people working from home.
Oh yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
I noticed that. I work from home, and I like working from home because it's what works for my business. But now that I have 2 contractors that work for me, and they're people that I know, I do feel less lonely having coworkers. And you're the type of person who gets up in the morning and comes to work, and it contributes to your overall well-being as a human, like getting up and going to work and interacting with people. I think that that's part of the conversation that gets missed a lot when we talk about hybrid work models. At the end of the day, we're social animals, and we need to be around other people.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that you've been, maybe during COVID, home alone more than you like to be. It's lonely.
Yeah.
And we're not built for that.
Yeah, well, I think you remember during COVID, I went to work every day. I didn't stay home.
Right.
I was always at work. So I think it's funny you bring up that one point is, I think one of the challenges for me during this entire time frame has been that, if the working from home hybrid model becomes a bit of an excuse. I hate that it's an excuse for not working hard. And really the social scientist in me, and probably most people, we're wondering I've heard lots of people say I work better from home. I'm way more productive. I get so much more done because there's less interruptions but I don't think that that's always the norm. And nor is the other reality to realistically, we've been hearing, look, everyone's going to be either replaced by robots or working from home. Yeah. And that's our future. But that totally denies everyone who works in a factory, everyone who's delivering products,
customer
everyone who's
service,
driving or cooking something. Yeah. It's you're not going to cook pizzas at home. You cook it at the restaurant you're working at. So it's someone's probably done the math of how many people actually there's even the potential to work from home. Yeah.
And again, I think it comes down to flexibility. I think that when people say I'm more productive at home, they should finish the sentence and say I'm productive at home 10% of the time or 20% of my time. Because there is something to be said about, water cooler conversations with your teammates, or just being able to stand up, walk down the hall and say, hey, I was just thinking about this. Can I get your input on that?
Right.
That's way more natural than sending an email or sending a text message or even calling somebody. It's way easier to just, hey, you're in your office. Can we have a quick chat about this? That's just a lot more organic than, when we're alone in our office, right?
There's that, I forget the exact saying, but there's some saying or quote. It's the speed of the leader, the speed of the pack.
Yeah.
Well, the leader works from home now. Yeah. It's that doesn't work. You just can't do it.
I think that's a really interesting point, Craig, because if you're a manager that works from home, you probably have to work extra hard for team engagement. I think it would be really hard to be a manager that works from home full time.
Yeah.
Well,
I guess then you start to see the iteration of that, and it's that, okay, well, now nobody works in the office. We're going to have more team building events.
Right.
So we're going to have to like start devising these
Yeah.
situations to engage with.
Yeah.
And I think people start to burn out on that now.
Yeah.
So-
And then you miss out on the mundane Monday afternoon coffee talk.
Yeah.
You know, maybe you sit in the lunchroom and have your lunch, and maybe there's someone that you never interact with at your company, and the only time you ever talk to them is in passing. And
Yeah.
that's 100% lost when you're working remote. I mean, you could easily have someone sitting beside me right now that could disagree with everything that we're talking about.
100%.
But I think,
And they'd be wrong.
but I just think that like from my experience, so this week I have a few things downtown that I'm like, okay, this is really good for me because I can't be in my office all day home alone because it's not good for me.
Yeah.
And, you know, I work between the hours that my kids are in school and I have things set up in a very purposeful way. But, you know, for example, after our conversation here, I'm meeting my team at Cactus Club for lunch so that we're like out in the downtown. And I've been downtown a few times and I'm like, oh, I kind of miss that vibe. And, you know, downtown Calgary, when it's busy, has a really great vibe, and you know, that lunch hour vibe. And there's something to be said for all that because, again, we're social animals. Even though we try to pretend that that sometimes we try to pretend that we're not.
Yeah. No, I agree. And like, you know, one of the realities is even when you're downtown, it's easy to settle into your little pocket of downtown and not see the bigger part. Like, I really love going down into the core, and I encourage our staff to go into the core too, just to say, look, there's other people down here.
Yeah.
And I was down there the other day, you know, probably just in the core area, and it was so busy.
Yeah.
It was great to see. It was invigorating, really.
Yeah.
So I love doing that.
Like it reminds you of, I don't know, of another, you know, like what would be a good, I'm trying to think of a good year, like 2019. It reminds you of like 2019 before COVID, right? When things were sort of back to normal, when you come downtown and you're like, oh my God, there's people.
Yeah.
Like restaurants are busy.
Yeah. And you know, there's still so many restaurants and businesses that are dependent on people being downtown, which is,
right.
You know, and so many have shut down over the last while. And there's even new ones that have opened up recently, which is pretty exciting too. So.
Yeah. Well, you touched a little bit on AI, and I think that's a really interesting topic. And I think that, I don't know, I saw a funny, like a meme about, you know, the transition of COVID to, we're going to work from home, it's going to be great, to we're back in the office, to we're all going to be replaced by AI. And I don't think that we're as close to all being replaced by AI as people think we are.
Yeah.
I could be, I could be totally wrong. Again, you know, so let's talk about recruiting in AI. Yes, there are tons of tools that we can use, but at the end of the day, a conversation between two people is not something that can be replaced by AI. Yeah. You can't, AI can tell you what a company culture is about. AI can tell you everything about a candidate, but you and I need to sit down in a room together and decide if the vibe is good, if I want to come work for your organization.
Yeah.
And again, you know, you talk about, you know, food production and stuff like that, like restaurants. Okay, well, we still need people there. Yes, AI can make things a lot easier, but I think AI's tool is to make life easier, but it's not to replace us.
Yeah. I think, you know, and there's the concept of chemistry between people, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's likely that AI can predict some of it, but 100%. It's unlikely that it can really sense chemistry, like can sense friendship or sense, you know, maybe they can pick up cues, you know, like more eye contact or smiling or whatever, but it doesn't really, that can be faked as well. So.
Yeah, like I think that I think we should lean into AI, but I don't think that we should say, oh, well, all these jobs are going to be replaced. Like, for example, so ChatGPT, super, you know, lots of buzz about it and super popular. And I do use it to rewrite things or get suggestions, but it doesn't replace anything for me. It just saves me a little bit of time when I might be having writer's block. Like, let's say I'm working on somebody's resume and I have a bunch of bullet points and I'm like, I really want this to, I really want to reword it. So I might throw it into ChatGPT and say, can you reword this so it sounds a little bit like this?
Right.
It spits it out, and then I still have to edit it. It's not
Sure.
it's not anywhere near perfect. It maybe has saved me, 20 minutes of me thinking about it and rewriting it myself.
Yeah.
But it puts it it might rewrite it into a way that I'm like, okay, perfect. This is sort of what I was thinking. I need to replace some of this language because it's just, it's an AI, so it's trying to be fancy or, trying to give me it's trying to tell me what I want to hear.
Yeah.
So I still edit it, but it hasn't replaced anything for me. Right? It's just made my life easier.
It's funny. I'm old, and so I think when I listen to young people and they're so leaning into some of this Chat GPT stuff. And,
right.
And it's like, wow, this is revolutionary, and we've kind of reinvented and that sort of thing. But like, it's not that new.
Right.
And realistically, when I was a kid, we still had writer's block. Mm-hmm. We still had to write stuff that was new.
Yeah.
And we used to call it plagiarism and a good thesaurus.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know if we've got a big win on our hands where ChatGPT solves the world's problems. It's just kind of cutting out some of the legwork that we have to do. So
I mean, if you're a high school student, say for example, using it to write your essays, I mean, fine. But it's not your thoughts, and you're really like selling yourself short, and you should still read it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and two, like, I guess like we use ChatGPT a lot here to create a novel version of a job description, perhaps, so that it's just different, But at the end of the day, it's just replacing thoughtfulness. Like, really, any one of us could sit down, and if we put enough brain power into it, we can do it ourselves. It's kind of replacing that. I do wonder sometimes if we don't lose something over time because we're not going to be thoughtful as much anymore. So like I could write you a love letter, and it's like, Chat GPT, write Treena a love letter, and it's going to spit out. But really, I should be doing that myself. Like, I shouldn't have to ask someone else to do something for me. Write a thank you note to someone. Like, at some level, we need to be capable of doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I joked one time, this is pretty kind of funny, is ChatGPT had just come out initially, so it's just a little while ago. And they're like, hey, how's life? You look tired. You're really busy. And I'm like, yeah, well, all this ChatGPT stuff, I'm answering all those questions. So, yeah, I'm busy.
That's funny.
Yeah, it was good.
I just don't think it's as like scary and omnipresent as sometimes you read about, like, we're all going to be replaced by AI. Like, okay, well, maybe not. I mean, maybe.
Well, like if you you take the big Venn diagram, like there's roles you're not going to replace with artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Like you simply can't finish concrete like with ChatGPT. It's just, you can learn how to do it, but you're not going to do it.
Yeah.
So we're really just talking to a crowd who, they're in the middle of that Venn diagram. And it is interesting too. My daughter, who's 17, she said, and this is purely anecdotal, not scientific research, but she said all the guys she knows, like other than maybe a couple, their future is to be an Instagram influencer, not to work, not to, when I was a kid, it was like, so are you going to be a cop, a firefighter, a lawyer, or a doctor? Like, choose one of the four. And now that's like, well, I'm going to be an influencer. And people are going to somehow magically pay me because I'm interesting and intriguing. But I'm also going to use ChatGPT to be interesting. Like, I'm not even going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting...
Oh, you better be good looking.
Yeah. And I don't know about that. It's, I mean, you bring up something that I think about a lot. I don't know if you ever follow Scott Galloway. Mm-hmm. He's a professor. I'm really obsessed with a lot of his content because a lot of it really resonates with me because I'm a mom of boys. And I don't know what the statistic is in Canada, but in the United States, like 2 out of every 3 college graduates are women. Like we've done
Yes,
so
that's
much.
right.
We've done so much for women, rightfully so. For sure, girls and women were falling behind. And I'm sure the statistics of men in leadership positions is still much, much, much higher than women. But we're ending up with a lot of boys being left behind in the educational system because maybe there's an expectation that they need to go to college, they mature slower than girls. And so you're just seeing fewer and fewer boys enter the professional world. And I notice that sometimes in recruiting. I don't know if you've noticed that, where for certain positions you just get more female applicants and more highly qualified female applicants. And that's wonderful. And absolutely we need to be doing things for women, but we also need to make sure that by doing things for women, we're not leaving boys behind. And I think that, being an influencer, okay, fine. I guess that's a vocation. But we should be encouraging boys to do other types of work, like get into trades, right? Because boys and men that, maybe aren't desk people, right? Maybe they like to... I don't think that we put enough value on people who like to work with their hands.
Yeah,
and how important that is for society, and how great of a profession that is financially, right? Like let's say you are an electrician, okay, so I'm not sure exactly how long the schooling is to become a working electrician, a couple years, maybe a 2-year diploma, 2-year diploma at SAIT. So the starting wage for a junior electrician is much, much higher than the starting wage for someone who maybe graduated from marketing.
Yeah.
And so my guess is that over time, those two individuals probably earn the same over time. Maybe the person in marketing will earn more towards the end of their career than the electrician, but I bet overall it's very similar. And I feel like we don't place enough emphasis on how important those jobs are and how valuable they are to society.
Yeah,
and so if you have a woman that say has graduated from university and she's looking at her prospects for men, Scott Galloway talks a lot about this, that they feel like the dating pool is not as strong for them and that there's less men. Well, we just aren't placing enough value on all of these other important jobs. An executive woman might say, I'm looking for an executive man, and maybe there's just fewer of them available. So I think that we need to make sure that we're lifting up boys so that, women have a strong dating pool and that the men have a strong dating pool too, right? And I feel like sometimes if you hear about, I don't know, I just feel like we don't place enough value on those types of positions.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about those roles too is, and I think people don't, I don't know, maybe this isn't for everyone either, but when you go to work in an executive type role and you're in a position of okay, well, what are you going to do today? What's your goal? And it's almost like we have to you take this putty of unknownness and we have to ram it together into something. An electrician who strips a wire and bends that wire and connects it to something and makes a light go on, that's very clearly what you do. Yeah. Whereas in executives, did you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish today? I have no idea. Yeah. Maybe. Yeah. Maybe everyone around me is more motivated than when I came in this morning. Right. I don't know. So, but a lot of the trade roles, there's a very clear step, from what you're supposed to do. Did you do it? Yes or no? And it's either yes or no.
And those jobs aren't going anywhere.
No.
Right?
Not at all.
Okay, fine. I'm sure that there are really great AI tools that will make those jobs easier, but you still, if you have an issue with your electrical in your house, AI can maybe tell you where the problem is, but you still need a human being to come in and fix it.
Yeah.
and make sure it's to code. Yeah. Right? And that's true of so many things, like carpentry. Okay, fine. You can get an AI to tell you exactly what you need to do to build the cabinets that you want to install in your kitchen, but you still need a human being to come in with a hammer and hammer them in.
And also those people aren't going to be working from home.
No.
So, because it has to be installed somewhere.
Yeah, we just moved into a new house, and one of the whole house painted a different color. Right. Okay, well, I
work from home.
I needed a human. I needed a human being.
Yeah, that's right.
I needed a human being to come in and physically paint the walls for me. Maybe one day they'll invent a tool that's like a Roomba that paints, but I still would rather.
In fairness, Steve could have painted your house.
Well, Steve would still, well, fair enough, but he would still be painting the house if that were true.
Yeah, that's right. You know, one thing you mentioned, which is quite interesting, is, and it's this trend that I've seen, and maybe you've seen it as well, is on social media or and I'm including like LinkedIn or any kind of this indexing sort of environment where people are, I think young people in particular, and even older people, have gotten into this mentality that it's like a phone book and everyone's in there.
Yeah.
And I've been preaching for years now that LinkedIn in particular is not a phone book. It's not 100% penetration of everyone in society is not on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And especially when you take into account individuals who are in trades types roles, why would you be on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Like, there's no point. And so then you say, okay, well, you know, we need, you know, men and women to be able to interact more. Well, you know, if we take a look at any of these social platforms and assume that they're, you know, ubiquitous and everyone's on them, well, they're not.
No.
And further to that, and it's kind of something we talked about off camera, was that when people are on some of these platforms, I think in a recruiter's mind, which is what we do, we go into these platforms and we make this assumption that their complete resume is in there.
Right.
And everything they've done is in there. Every keyword we'd ever look for. And I tell people, it's like, look, at best, you have to assume that maybe half the people that you need to talk to are in LinkedIn, and a good portion of them treat LinkedIn like a business card.
Yeah.
And so if you look at a business card, you can't tell much about anyone. You don't know the software you use or things that they're good at or how long they've done something. And LinkedIn's like that.
Yeah. So. And even when I do a LinkedIn audit for a client whose resume I've done, I don't copy and paste their bullet points from their resume into LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. I just put in, and I do this for a couple of reasons. I like how it looks on LinkedIn when someone keeps the information really basic and clean. I don't think that your resume needs to be copy and pasted onto LinkedIn. I think that we should leave some things off of LinkedIn. And if that doesn't resonate with you, that's fine. Copy and paste everything into your LinkedIn. That's totally okay. But you're right. You need to assume that maybe someone hasn't updated their profile in 5 years because they've just been at that job. Maybe they're still with X company, but they've been promoted. So I mean,
didn't update.
Right.
My goodness.
How dare
heresy.
I know, how dare they? So I mean, when I'm doing a LinkedIn update for somebody, I make sure that their picture's decent. Doesn't have to be a professional headshot, even though I think that if you're a professional, it's a great investment, not necessary. But I tell people that you have to think of your profile picture as just, if you and I were going for coffee and we'd never met before, it's a great way to say, oh, I know who I'm looking for.
Right.
So it doesn't need to be super professional. It can just be like a selfie that's like, that you're not wearing sunglasses or a hat.
Not in your car.
Right. Well, it could be in your car.
Maybe in your car.
Right, that would be fine. You're like, I'm having a good hair day today.
Yeah.
I tell people to use the background photo just because it's there. You might as well put a picture of like the city you live in because it looks nice. I shorten people's URLs to just your name just because it looks nice. Like little things. One of my pet peeves is when people, in the headline, when they like put sentences in there, like 5 or 6 sentences in that headline. I think that that's too much. Again, I do this with the resumes that I work on too, is that I really believe in less is more. I think that I think we have a tendency to be too wordy on our resumes. And I mean, you've been in the recruiting business for a couple of years.
Decades.
You just want people to get to the point, right? This is what I've done in my career. So I do that with a headline. Keep it short and sweet. The about section, I keep that short and sweet. And then for the career section, I just keep it to the job, the company, and the years. Because as a recruiter, I can make some assumptions based on the title, and I don't have time to sit there and read the whole thing. I'm going to reach out to you. Hey, so-and-so, do you want to talk to me about this role? Yes or no. If it's the timing good for them, they're going to say yes. If it's not, they're going to say no. And I also have reservations about the open to work banner that people put on there.
I know.
And I've read some articles. I've read some articles on that where people are like, "Oh no, you should use it." And if you're a recruiter that doesn't think people should use it, like you're like you're a snob or something like that. I can't remember exactly what they said, but I was like, well, here's the deal. If your LinkedIn profile is simple and up to date and you are looking for work, whether or not you have that open to work banner on there doesn't matter to me. I'm going to reach, like as recruiters, we're going to reach out to you whether you're unemployed or not. We don't care. Yeah. Like it's totally irrelevant. We if you're qualified for the job, whether or not you're working, doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, and here's a cynical side to me a little bit is when I see a profile that says open to work, it's like, oh, why?
Right.
Great. They lost their job or they got laid off or does their employer know?
Right.
I don't know.
I mean,
to me, it's like a little bit of a It's a bit of a turnoff, to be honest. I hate to say it, but
it's a little bit of a stigma that we as recruiters end up in because so much of our job is so much of our job satisfaction is stealing someone away from a job for another client for a great opportunity. And sometimes we might place a little bit of a lesser value on somebody who's not working because we want to present the best people to our clients. And often the best people for their job is happily working somewhere else.
And they're not looking.
Right. Yeah. So I think that it's a stigma that recruiters have created. I don't know. But why set yourself up for that stigma when whether or not you're working is irrelevant to us as long as you just have a nice looking, a half decent looking resume and a half decent looking LinkedIn profile so that when we do present you to our client, you look shiny.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right, because we're always just looking for shiny people to present to our clients, right?
Yeah.
Look at how shiny this person is and fabulous and such a great fit, right?
Yeah, and the reality is that I think recruiters, we might be the worst. We actually literally think that the rest of the world is on LinkedIn every day.
Right.
And that is so not true.
100%.
Like, people are not checking LinkedIn messages. They're not updating LinkedIn.
No.
They're not polishing it.
No.
They go in when there's a need.
Yeah.
Right? They go in when there's their company said, look, you got to go fix your LinkedIn profile. It means something to the world, but
no,
man, people don't. I literally don't even know if I've been on my own profile for months.
Right.
So
you might have a bunch of messages
terrible.
in there. Oh, is it though? Is it though? I deleted social media off my phone.
Okay.
Because I was scrolling too much. I did have to add Facebook back because I needed to sell a couple of things. But now that it's on there, I'm like, oh, I just need to sell these things so I can take it off. Because I just found that I was spending too much time scrolling. And before we had apps and we still had Facebook and we were on our computer scanning Facebook, it's on our phone, it's so easy to scroll and spend so much time on there. But when you go back to looking at Facebook and Instagram on your computer, it's not nearly as satisfying because you can't scroll in the same way, like unless you have a touchscreen or something. But it's still not as gratifying. So I find that I spend way less time on social media. And I got to this point where I'm like, okay, I post pictures of my kids so family members can see them. But do I need to know about everything that's going on in everybody's lives? There's something that's lost about bumping into somebody and saying, "Oh, what have you been up to? Oh, I was just on a vacation. Oh, cool. Tell me about that." As opposed to, "Oh yeah, I saw that on Instagram." And then you're like the conversation kind of ends. Like, oh, well, if I saw it on Instagram, like there's something like, in social media is great to stay connected to certain people that maybe you don't see on a regular basis, but there's something lost in catching up with people and not knowing about what's going on there. I
also feel like social media tends to be sanitized. You're not gonna put up, hey, I'm really tired, I'm falling asleep at my desk. That's never going to be on Instagram. You're going to show your best you. Yeah. Well, or it'll be purpose behind I'm falling asleep at my desk because my job sucks, and I want you to pump me up because
Well, and part of it too, I was like, oh, well, people don't need to know. Yes, it's sanitized, but But why do I need to share anything about how I'm feeling? And in this world of we talk so much about mental health with youth, and so much of their lives are online that and I did it for myself to be online less, but I also did it for my kids, right? Because they ask me, well, what are you doing? What are you doing on your phone? And I regret handing either of my kids an iPad ever because they're obsessed with it. And I'm 100% to blame for that.
What are they using it for? Your kids are young.
Yeah, but they like to look on YouTube, like even YouTube Kids. Yeah. It's funny because I'm obviously, you and I are both older than when the TV was invented, but you remember
what?
Or the TV was invented before. So, but when we were kids, it was like, oh, you're spending too much time in front of the television.
Sure.
And now I would rather my kids spend time in front of the TV than their iPad.
Yeah.
Part of the reason is, again, with the scrolling, is it's so easy for them to lose interest in something they're watching on their iPad and just switch to another show. Mm-hmm. And so kids are losing their attention span. Whereas if they're forced to watch a TV show, they have to watch it from beginning to end, whether they like it or... And if they don't like it, they can go do something else. So I have been consciously trying to limit how much screen time they get, but they beg for it because they like that little serotonin hit when they get it. And so it's just my job as a parent to try to have them be on it less.
It's interesting what you say about TVs because they, everything in social media it's directed at you.
Yeah.
And so what you see is different than what I see because
100%.
of your bias.
Yeah.
And then, but on television, if you and I both, flipped on the TV and we flip on a show, that show is the show we want to watch at that minute. And we're going to see the ads that are attached to that show. And
yeah. Well, and even they don't even have to have it that ambiguous because they can still pick what they want to watch on Netflix, right? But then I'm like, okay, watch a show on Netflix, and then it'll automatically go to the next one. But that to me is still better than some of the things that they are watching on YouTube. Yeah. Like even YouTube Kids, it's like, okay, well, this is 2 minutes, and if it doesn't catch your attention in 2 minutes, you're going to go to the next thing. And I don't want them to have their whole childhood to be like that, right? So trying to turn it off. I let them play. I've been letting my older one play Duolingo since he's in Spanish bilingual school, right? So that he can at least. So he's a little bit obsessed with that. But I'm like, okay, well, at least you're kind of learning another language while you're playing these games.
That's awesome.
So that's better. But I was like, okay, what can I do? Okay, I'm going to take social media off my phone, and I noticed that I go on Instagram once a day, 10 minutes, way less time, and then I don't feel the need to go on it again.
Yeah. I guess my daughter, she's in that age category where social media means something. She doesn't have Snapchat, which I literally know zero. I know nothing about it, so I don't want to say anything else because it'll make me sound dumb. But she doesn't have Snapchat, and I think that's been great for her. But I think what a lot of people need to remember, and this applies to LinkedIn as well, is that all of these tools, or whatever we want to call them, apps or tools, are entirely designed to keep us on the tool.
Yeah.
It's designed to keep you there and continue the watching process.
Yeah.
So, and it's...
Totally.
Yeah, even LinkedIn, which is... I think a lot of people see LinkedIn as this, highbrow sort of situation where it's informational, but no, it's totally designed to keep you on LinkedIn.
I mean, people feel a little more comfortable being political on LinkedIn, right? Which, I have mixed feelings about, but you're right. And I'm not on Snapchat or TikTok or
I don't get
Twitter,
TikTok,
which is now X.
I've never been on Twitter.
Well, you're not. I don't think you're missing much because I feel like I purposely have decided not to do any of those things, and my life hasn't really changed. There's no.
Yeah. And
being on Instagram hasn't made my life any better or worse. So it's just just getting back to and I don't. Sometimes it makes me feel like I'm getting old, where I'm like I don't need any of that stuff, but you actually don't.
Yeah.
And just connecting with people is always going to be way more rewarding.
Yeah, sure. So, call a friend.
Yeah.
See what they're up to.
And using the tools for what they are at their best. So, for example, I have a couple of messenger chats with my best girlfriends. Okay, well, we don't get to see each other as much as maybe we would want to because we all have kids and our lives are busy. So it's nice to have sort of this like open line of communication where we're always sort of having a conversation. Okay, well, that's something that you can say that has some value because I'm connected to my friends when we don't get to see each other as much, as opposed to, you know, just like seeing what random people are up to on whatever platform.
That's a waste.
Right.
Really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I have some girlfriends that will, it's like the one reason to be on Instagram, like close girlfriends where they might not post anything except when they're on vacation. And I actually love that because it's not like I don't have vacation envy. I'm like, oh my God, you know, so-and-so's on vacation and they always like post the best stuff because they want, you know, their friends to see what they're up to. They're not doing it they're not doing it to brag. It's like, well, this is the only time I'm online, so you can see that I'm drinking a margarita. And I think it's great, right? Yeah. But like, because I know they're not doing it to brag. They're doing it to, you know.
I hate to admit that the biggest inspiration on Instagram for me is actually recipes and mostly things made of chocolate.
I know. Get made of chocolate. Are you allowed to indulge in chocolate anytime soon? Are you done competing?
Done for the foreseeable future. So
well, good thing Halloween's tomorrow, so
eating.
You're good.
Yeah. I've been well into it. So no, it's been good. So what do you just as we were talking about the other things other than LinkedIn, because I think sometimes we elevate LinkedIn to this pinnacle level, and without it, all recruiters would shut down completely, which is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Do you use other tools besides LinkedIn now for like? Do you verify LinkedIn information off of other tools, or do you use them at all for looking for people?
I mean, yes. I still do post ads for certain clients for certain positions from time to time, depending on the role. You know, for example, I'm looking for an accounting clerk for a client. Like, okay, well, that's a junior position. You can post that and get a bunch of people, and that's great because that's a high volume position. The beauty about like this is why agencies do well is because we have a database of people that we've talked to over the years. So look at my database and see who's in there. You know, they're talking to people. Hey, you work in this space. Do you know anybody else I can reach out to? So those tools are always
it's almost like they've never changed.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I use LinkedIn a ton because it's a fast way to get a hold of people. And I think more than anything on LinkedIn, I think that what I do well is when I reach out to somebody, I'm so to the point. I mean, how often do you get these like long, convoluted sales messages from people on LinkedIn that are sort of tarnishing the spirit of the platform? And sometimes people write back to me and be like, I don't normally write back to people on LinkedIn, but your message was like fast and to the point. I'm like, I'm recruiting for job A with company B. Are you interested in chatting? Yes or no? They're like, like that was so basic.
I'd have to admit that LinkedIn I'm a bit sullied right now because I get so many messages on LinkedIn that are purely sales.
Right.
And I'm just done with it.
Yeah.
Like as soon as something feels like it was, certainly if it feels like it was done by AI.
Yeah.
I am done. I don't even read those messages anymore.
Yeah, and I still do reach out to people on LinkedIn for sales purposes. Like I'll reach out to CEOs and see if they want their resume done, for example, because a lot of times they don't know that service exists. But I preface those messages by saying, just so you know, this is the only message you're going to get from me. I'm not going to send you 5 or 6. I'm like, and then usually I get a thank you, not interested. Okay, great. But at least they know out there, and when the time comes, because I do a lot of CVs for CEOs that maybe are close to retirement or moving into board work, for example. That's a really fun niche for me. And so I'm just like, so you know, I'm tucked away back here so that if in a year from now you're like, oh crap, I need a CV for this board position. Who is that girl that reached out to me, right?
2 years ago,
And that has happened to me. We're like, oh my God, I didn't need it at the time. And that's the kind of salesperson I've always been. Like, I'm not here to annoy you. This is what I have to offer. If you're interested, amazing, let's chat. But I'm not going to send you 10 messages.
Right.
You know the ones. Hey, did you get my message? Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I'm here to do the work, not to market.
Yeah.
I'm good at the work. And if I spend all day marketing, I might not be that good at the work.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's interesting. I find that the recruiting gig has changed a little bit, and I just when we train new people and they come in, and I have to remind them what a phone book is, or what, that we used to post ads in the newspaper.
Yes.
And it was like,
full
what's a
page
newspaper?
ads.
And it was like every Wednesday there was a career section in the newspaper, and we have to talk about that. I wonder sometimes if we look 10 years or 20 years down the road and we say, back in 2000 we used to like post ads on LinkedIn or whatever it was, but I am seeing a bit of here's another wave of companies suggesting, or even recruiters saying, look, if I post an ad, it's so rare that I'll ever see someone that's qualified that it's not worth my time anymore to post ads, because I'm just spending all of my time saying no to people from other countries that are, they have no ability to get here, unqualified. It's so easy to apply, right? Like you say, hey, look, I need someone who's a CFO, must have 15 to 20 years experience, must be, a certified accountant. Yeah. I'm going to get someone who's a marketing person. Yeah. Right? And it's just like, oh, that's interesting, apply. That's interesting, apply. It's like, oh my goodness. And now we have to look at those. And the other thing that's interesting is, of course, there's no secret, all recruiters are using some form of applicant tracking so that we can manage that. When you post ads and people reply, those replies are going into the applicant tracking tool. And now we're getting a bloated applicant tracking tool that we have to go and clean up all the time. Yeah. So just a challenge.
Well, and that's funny because that's one of the reasons why I started doing resumes for people. Because what I do with someone's resume is so simple, but I think, and you've seen a resume that I've done for someone before, that little thing that's really pretty, nicely formatted, not over the top, and I get so many people that are like, will it get read by an applicant tracking system? Yes, as long as you PDF it. Like, a computer's smart enough to see that it's a PDF of a Word document. Yeah, and if it's not, then your ATS is really old and you need to get a new one. Yeah. But people don't understand, like, yes, okay, fine, your resume is being looked at by a computer, but if you just take that extra little bit to make your resume look nice to a set of human eyeballs, like, how many resumes, Craig, have you looked at where you're like, that's a really nice looking resume? Yeah. So few. Yeah. And it's such an art form of what I do for people that they're like, they don't, I wish that everybody would invest in it. I mean, then I'd have to like make them that much better. But because so few people invest in it, like, your resume is going to be at the top of this pile because it's so easy to read and so simple. Yeah. And so simple.
Right to the point.
Right to the point. Yeah. So,
how many times have you looked at I'm sure you've done this. You get a resume and it says, I work at XYZ company, and then there's like a mountain of stuff. And I've literally sat in front of numerous people over the years and said, tell me what you do. Right. Because I'm not going to read this. Yeah. There's so much. Yeah. And plus you don't do this on a regular basis. This is just stuff you may have done.
And it's nobody's fault. Like, nobody, who maybe you had a resume class in university, maybe. Yeah. And then what, right? Yeah. Like, it's not something that we're taught how to do, and I just am good at it because I've been looking at them for so long. Like, I'm sure if you had I'm sure that if you liked spending time on Word, then you could probably create a pretty nice looking resume, but it's it's daunting.
Sometimes it's nice to have a third party do it, though.
Yeah, 100%.
Because then they're looking at you at a, like, I think we all get invested in ourselves and we see ourselves in a certain way, and then a third party comes in and says, actually, this is more of who you are, and that can be good. Yeah. So, we need more of that.
Call me.
Yeah, I think I see an awful lot of resumes, and it's shocking how difficult it is sometimes to tell what those people do for a living. Right. And that's because
we just get in our head.
Yeah.
More than anything.
Yeah, but I do think, though, that like the resume and LinkedIn interaction is important. Like, there is an interaction between the two, although the resume probably should be more complete. Yeah. But if the LinkedIn doesn't mirror in some way Like it should be a consistent message.
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and it could be as simple as just making sure that the title and the dates match.
Yeah.
Right? And I take the months off people's resumes, but keep the years. Because it doesn't matter if you worked in that job from July to April or, if you were there for 5 years, like, we don't need to remember the months.
Yeah.
Right?
You know what's an interesting, I don't even know what to think about it yet, is on LinkedIn, if I put down that I literally could put down that I'm a pilot for WestJet.
Yeah.
There's no audit process.
Right.
I should have done that 10 years ago. I said I was a pilot at WestJet for the last 15 years. And like, there's no audit. And WestJet can't go on to LinkedIn, and they can complain, but WestJet infrequently ever does anything about it. We have employees that work at our company that haven't been employed here for probably close to 15 years, and it still says they work here.
Right.
Today, and it's like, wow,
Okay.
it's like not the case. And those
Well, they're
people
clearly
might
not
be
using
dead.
you as a reference.
No, they might be dead. It's entirely possible that they
Well,
passed away.
Yeah, that's true.
And there's no one going out there auditing the bloat. So
yeah.
yeah, that's shocking. And I shouldn't know. I was just about to say her name, but there's like literally one lady who hasn't worked here for years.
And still has it on there.
Yeah. So and doesn't have anything else. Like, it's like,
I mean, she might have
left and
did she
ended.
stop working? And she just hasn't bothered to look at her LinkedIn, is my guess.
Literally could be dead. Like, literally is kind of evaporated
Should you
from
check
society.
in with her and make sure that she's not dead, maybe?
Don't have her number.
Did you ever you're connected to her on LinkedIn?
I should send her a message. Hey, just noticed you haven't been at work for the last 15 years.
Yeah. That's
And you're going to get a letter.
Yeah. Cease and
No.
desist.
Yeah, so it is interesting. So what else is new and exciting in the world?
Not much.
You've been doing some work with TED Talks.
I have, yes.
So
Yep, that's
that's
been
been
going really
fun.
great. We've
Yeah.
been doing their on-site hiring for, they did 3 events this year, so we helped them with their TED Women in Atlanta,
Oh, cool.
Countdown in Detroit, and then back in April they do their annual the big TED event in Vancouver.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, so we're excited to work with them
Have you
again
been
next
going
year.
to the events?
We did go to the event in Vancouver. It was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cool, the whole TED experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
Yeah,
I'd
so
like
we'll be
to
doing-
I'd like to do that. That'd be
Yeah.
fun. So.
Well, the tickets for TED in Vancouver start at $10,000. The swag bags
What?
are pretty special. Yeah.
10
It's like pretty curated. Like, it's crazy.
Oh.
All your food's included, all
$10,000.
these experiences, these renowned speakers. Oh, yeah. Special.
$10,000 though.
Yeah.
That's pretty high. I was gonna go, but I'm clearly not going now.
Good. You could.
Cool. Okay, let's wrap up. So, okay.
So nice to
Yeah.
see you.
Yeah, so great to see you too. I know you're super busy and got to get off to the other stuff.
Yes.
So,
It's nice to be downtown.
let's not do this once a year.
Was it yeah, it's been a while. Well,
A little more frequently than once a year.
Okay.
So,
Thank
all right.
you for
Okay.
having me.
Thanks for coming. Enjoy
All right.
your day.
Thanks.
Okay, bye.